It's the Teller Drawer. Real talk, real money, real people.
Credit unions were started by communities.
The standpoint of just being a credit union, it's kind of our job to go beyond.
Listening to the community. What are the needs?
CSE can come in and they can do financial literacy.
They're going to get that balance. They're going to get that purchase amount.
If you reach out to us, we'll help you.
The big myth is that it's always banks beat credit union.
It takes a lot of A's to get to a D, to get to a B.
Welcome back, everybody. We're excited to be here for another episode. Thank you guys who watch. Thank you guys who listen. We are here again. My name is Lucas Tyndale, here with my good friend Tim, who we just realized was an expert, or he says he brings experts.
I just bring experts.
You bring experts. Okay. I call them your friends because they know you and you know them, and you're telling me. And today you brought somebody from out of town and everything.
All the way up from Columbus.
All the way up from Columbus.
But she's not from Columbus. She's a Massillon native.
Okay.
So she is local.
Okay.
I guess in that aspect. But yeah, so I brought our Chief Operating Officer, Jeannie, again, and Emily Leite from the Ohio Credit Union League. The Ohio Credit Union League is kind of the advocacy arm of credit unions in Ohio, and they do a lot more than just advocacy. But that's what we're here to talk about today is advocacy, regulatory things, politics, but not politics like what you're thinking. So
okay, I don't know. I'm not nervous. We can talk about it.
How governments and regulation and stuff like that impacts credit unions and why it's important to credit unions to have people like Emily fighting for the rights of our members, you know, people that are just average everyday citizens in Stark County, credit union members who want to maintain access to fair, affordable financial products, all that stuff. So that's why we brought her today, and that's about enough.
I think it's important. And anybody out there listening or watching who's thinking, well, why do I care about this part of it, right? They're not talking to me about my credit score. They're not talking to me about fraud that might hurt me. Oftentimes we don't understand the inner workings of things like this. We don't understand the things that are going on behind the scenes until it does affect us.
Sure.
And we're like, I didn't know that there was a policy that was changed, that now there's some extra regulation. I had a tax refund recently. And when I brought it to the credit union, they said, we have to put a hold on this. And I'm like, it's from the government. What do you mean it's from the government? And they're like, well, the government no longer insures things because people are even making fraudulent checks from it. I'm like, what? But that was a policy change. And then the credit unions had to respond because the government would no longer insure them because they couldn't even keep up with all the fraud or something like that was a thing. But there's people out there fighting for other rights to make sure things work smoothly because they realize that there's regular everyday people who can't afford to jump through a bunch of hoops because they need their dollars and cents as quickly as possible, possibly, right? And not knowing that maybe this was held off for years because someone was advocating for me, or maybe there's another policy that could hurt me that someone is fighting for to make sure that a small business owner like myself or just an everyday person it doesn't run into some more hurdles. There's people out there fighting for us. So to anybody out there listening or watching, stay tuned because this could really help us.
And you nailed the word on the head, or the nail. You nailed the nail.
I nailed the nail. Hit the nail on the head.
It's usually what they on the head with the word policy. And so many of the policies and procedures that we have in place are the result of rules and laws that are made down in Columbus or made in DC. So oftentimes when there is a change, I've been doing this for years and now you're telling me I can't. Well, it's because we had to make a change because of some other rule somebody else made.
That's exactly what they told me.
So that's kind of where many of those conversations start, and Emily's going to talk about a lot of that stuff. And again, why it's important, why credit unions like CSE send people to DC or down to Columbus to be a part of that conversation so that we can have laws and rules tailored to serve our best interests as a credit union, which then in turn serves the best interests of our members. So
that's awesome.
So that's kind of the goal.
It's great.
And hopefully this is a fascinating conversation.
No, I'm
even
interested.
Just over off to the side, she's educating me on the history of the word lobbyist and all kind of different stuff. So it's exciting. It's exciting stuff. It probably doesn't seem exciting to the average person, but when you learn kind of nuances of tricks of the trade and what does lobbying, what does advocacy actually mean, it's just kind of fun.
I love it.
So
absolutely. I love it. So what does this all mean?
So what does that mean?
Right.
So what does that mean?
Great.
Oh, that's a great question. And thank you for having me here. It's always fun to come back home. I am, as Tim said, a Massillon native. I was actually the Massillon Tiger OB in 2004.
That is fascinating.
So, yep, I used to run on the football field in between the bands, and I did that. Yeah, I tried to.
Okay,
It was
right.
the costume was a bit limiting, but that's okay.
There's a little bit of oxygen in there.
That's
maybe,
right. But that's right. Just a little bit.
Just a little
but
bit, right.
no, Northeast Ohio is near and dear to my heart. And we talk about the theme of advocacy. And I feel like parts of Northeast Ohio, my grandfather worked for Republic Steel when they were here, right?
Right.
Back in the 1940s and 1950s was when he started out his career after serving in World War II. And it's almost like parts of this part of the state have been forgotten. Right. There's nobody really advocating for them except for those that are from Northeast Ohio. And so I always try to highlight a little bit of that when I get a chance, when I'm in front of a lawmaker or I'm in front of somebody, to say, hey, don't forget about Northeast Ohio, because they have a lot of dreams. There's a lot of hard work and grit and tenacity, and you can move mountains with that if given the right resources and right opportunities. So it's always a pleasure to be back here. But that's exactly what advocacy is standing up for something that you feel dearly about or passionate about. I feel passionate about Northeast Ohio. I feel passionate about the great work that credit unions do for their communities. My sister is a CSE Federal Credit Union member, and so I love using her as an example. She probably doesn't know I do that when I'm in Congress or at the State House. Yeah, I am having lunch with her after this. But I talk about how CSE has made a difference for her, given her an extra chance, or a second chance, I guess I should say, to have an account, to get a loan, to buy a car so she can go to work and set up a savings account so she can take care of her two kids, right? My two nephews. And so advocating is really just standing up for something that you believe in deeply. And it's not the doom and gloom or the scary parts of politics. The election hangover is real. No one wants to talk about politics. And that's not really advocacy. Advocacy is standing up for something you believe in and working with others that have the same ideas, the same passion that you do, and working together to make change or to grow something that's very positive in your community, or to defend against something that could be a detriment, right? A regulation that means you can't get your tax return or your tax refund in time. Right. Well, maybe well-intentioned from the government, because fraud is a problem. We can talk about that being a major issue. It does impact your ability to, maybe you were going to use that to put a down payment on a home, right? Or maybe you were going to do that to help pay for Christmas gifts or whatever it might be, or make a next investment, or to purchase a car, right? To upgrade something. And so it is very frustrating from a consumer standpoint. They don't know why. And then they usually think it's the institution or the financial institution.
The teller across the desk.
Right. That you did this to me personally. Right. Yes. And it's very much not that. Credit unions are so unique in that they focus on serving the member and putting people and their needs first over profit. And so they do go out of their way to find creative solutions. They go out of their way to talk to the community about how to save, how to increase your credit score, how to make your paycheck go a little bit further every month. Right? So you can make rent, so you can pay your bills, so you can take care of your kids and your families. And so credit unions are so unique in that. And it's important to advocate for their well-being, because it translates back to the community well-being and the ability to have more financial inclusion, especially in Northeast Ohio. I think we have to take care of our own here in this part of the state. And that's what credit unions are. They're made up of the members of the community that want to take care of each other through financial services. And so they belong to a credit union, which they own an equal share of, to then go do that. And so standing up for those issues in front of decision makers and telling that story is so important, because it stops policy that might inhibit a service or financial inclusion or community well-being, which is the whole mission of credit unions to foster.
So you've already walked halfway through the outline that we had.
Well, all right. Great job.
We'll just keep this moving. But you just talked about standing up in front of people. Who are those people? Like, explain to us on an average day for you. I mean, you're in DC, you're in Columbus. Who are you talking to and advocating for on behalf of credit unions?
Oh, that's a great question, Tim. And so I don't know how many of you remember civics class or government class, right? So there are 535 members of Congress, 100 in the U.S. Senate, 435 in the U.S. House of Representatives. Ohio has 17 members out of the 535, right? 2 U.S. senators. And we're about to have a big change there, right? With Senator-elect Bernie Moreno coming in and Senator Vance becoming the vice president-elect of the United States. And so we have some shifts votes there happening. But we also have 15 members of Congress, right? And they represent all parts of the state. And then we have the state government, right? So that's federal government, 535 members. State government, we have 132 members. So we have 99 members in the Ohio House of Representatives.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
If the federal government only has 500, why do we need 100?
Yeah, it is. I know. It's a lot of people. It's a lot of voices and a lot of backgrounds, right?
That's a lot of people.
And a lot of interest, right? They have their own priorities.
Of course, right. And their constituents and people are knocking on their door to say, hey, I elected you because you said you were going to make sure the big bank won, and somebody else said, I'm fighting for the little guys in the credit unions. And I thought you said we were going to win. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And then 33 in the Ohio Senate. So you have like 660 plus voices just at the federal and state levels that demand or dictate what happens to our everyday life.
Yeah.
How we go to work, how we pay for our groceries, how we take care of our kids, what schools our kids can go to, and how we can save or access financial services. All of those decisions are being made all the time with these 600 plus voices. And so how do you help those voices, all 600 of them, understand what your issue is? And so think about how many businesses are operating across the country or in the state of Ohio. It's literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions, right nationally. How are 600 plus voices supposed to be an expert on all those businesses? Your podcast, right? How are they supposed to understand it? And they don't know. We can't expect them to know unless we tell them. And that's what advocacy is. And so it is sharing your business model, your hopes and dreams on what you would like to see. And if there's a hurdle in the way, help me move this so I can go impact change on your constituents. In Ohio, there's 3.3 million Ohioans who belong to a credit union. There's 209 credit unions across the state. And so how does 1 out of every 4 Ohioans get services from a credit union unless the state or the federal government allows them to, right? And they might not know that check hold is causing a problem. And it's up to the credit union to identify that problem with the member, let their partners know, like the Ohio Credit Union League or America's credit unions at the federal level. And then we go tell that story to those lawmakers. We know who to ask and we know who to inform that can actually do something about it. Right.
Fascinating. I think it is fascinating. And we often don't think about those decisions that are made. And it is a very tricky situation when we live in a free country, but freedom comes with rules, right? There has to be something that governs us and keeps us kind of in some type of boundaries, I suppose. But I don't think we think about all these little things very often. And so for you, why? Number one, I'm curious, one, what got you into this field? And then two, what chance do you have to advocate for credit unions against the big banks? I mean, really, do you really have a chance? I mean, when I think about the dollars they have to put behind advocates or lobbyists or whatever they want, they could send armies of people.
Yeah, especially going back to what we talked about on a different episode where credit unions as an industry
would only be the third biggest bank. If you put them all together, they would only compare to the third biggest bank in the nation.
That's a great point. And I'll let you talk. Sorry,
so what chance do you really have? What it's like a little person in the crowd jumping up like, hey, me, hey, I have a point. Yeah, exactly. And these big banks that can stand at the table and say, we built the Federal Reserve. Like JP Morgan, they can say, like, what are you talking? We bailed out the government. I mean, the government bailed them, right? But at one point,
that just didn't happen though. They did
bail out banks. But at one point, JP Morgan bailed out the federal government and they created the Federal Reserve. So, I mean, there's a lot of complication to the history of it. So what chance do you all, one, why did you get into it? Secondly, what chance do you all have to advocate for people like us?
That was both great questions, Lucas. Thank you for those. So the reason I got into advocacy per se was just because I wanted to make a difference. It sounds so cliche and a canned response, but it's true. I wanted to leave a mark or improve society in some way. And so while I was going through college, I moved from Massillon when I graduated from Massillon Washington High School, went to school at Capital University in Columbus. It's a smaller school. And I was a first generation generation college kid. And so for me, small was better because it was new and different. I didn't really have anybody to lean on to be like, tell me how this works, or, do I have support, right? You had to kind of fight and figure it out.
Right.
And so small was great. And while I was there, I had some really good advisors and my college professors. And I was able to use my network of students and connections to get an internship at the Ohio State House. And I've always loved government, always loved history. I thought it was the coolest thing that I could walk into the State House and like go get coffee and make copies.
Right.
That's what interns do, right?
That's awesome.
But I got to be around all these elected officials, and I just thought it was so interesting to, learn about who's making our rules or laws in America and in the state. And so I loved being around it, and ended up turning into a full-time job after I graduated from college, and served as a legislative aide in the Ohio House and the Ohio Senate for 3 different elected officials. So a senator and then 2 House of Rep members, so representatives. And I learned so much. I talked to everyday people calling our office, needing help with their Medicaid application, with their unemployment compensation, with their ability to get a business license, or to break through the taxation department. It was a way we were a conduit to their success and to help them. And it felt really good to solve a really big problem for somebody. It might have seemed little, in the grand scheme of things that's going on, but one small problem solved for somebody meant the world, right? Yes. And that translated to votes for us, right? Like if we can help serve these people, they'll vote for us so we can still be here and continue to champion them. So that really, caught me on to like, well, can I do this on a bigger scale? I would love to advocate for something I believed in, right? That I thought was impactful. I've always been a credit union member. I was the vice president of our class. And so our account is still at Friends and Family Credit Union in Massillon. So I've always been a member of credit unions. My grandfather, worked at Republic Steel. They had a credit union, right? And Canton City School employees, Federal Credit Union, Canton Schools had a credit union, right? Friends and Family used to be the Massillon School Employees Credit Union, right? Until they changed their name.
I didn't know that.
Absolutely. And so when I saw the job opening on a government job board at the State House, I applied for it and found my way into credit unions. And my job is easy because I believe in what credit unions do. And I've personally felt the impact of what credit unions can do. And so it's easy for me to stand up and say what I say because it's very genuine, and I mean it. I truly believe in it. So I've drinking the proverbial Kool-Aid, if you will, right? And so that's how I got into it. And the second question on how do you stand out with all these other interests, right? Because I just mentioned all those 600 plus voices.
And they're not even just advocating for anything in banking for that matter. I'm talking about standing up against the banks, but people are advocating. I used to work in childcare. We went to Columbus to advocate for rules around childcare laws, Title 20, low-income families getting access to care and all those things. And somebody else was down there advocating for something else.
Or for you not to have that, right? It's we always say politics or advocacy is a blood sport. And it is, because there are so many different viewpoints or competing interests. And so, the big myth is that it's always banks v credit unions, right? It isn't. Mostly, we have so much more in common than we don't. We fight over like 5% to 9% of the issues we might differ on. But for the most part, any financial regulation that impacts a bank will impact a credit union. But there are unique circumstances where that's not necessarily the case. And something is unique to credit unions because they are different. They're not a bank because they're a financial cooperative. They're owned by their individual members, and they serve a common purpose in the community. They understand you, they're made up of you, and so their products and services are tailored to meet your needs. And so the way we stand out is talking about that differentiation in the marketplace, how credit union missions are different. They put people over profit. There is a place for for-profit banks, and they do great work, but there is also a place for credit unions, and they put people over profit and do great work. And so the job of advocacy is to help make that distinguishing mark of credit unions in the financial services marketplace that's so competitive, right? And so that's how you distinguish. And so you tell stories, you bring credit unions like CSE Federal Credit Union to the table to talk about a unique member story. I still remember there's an example from, I think this was probably 2016. There was a big push to curtail small dollar lending. Small dollar lending is a way to be flexible. Like, I'm going to give somebody a 0% interest loan really quickly. They'll pay it off in 30 days and then they can go get groceries, right? And it was a payday lending alternative. And the federal government wanted to regulate them very much like payday lenders and try to put, it has to be this term, it has to be this interest rate. You can't charge this fee. You can't do that. It really mucked up the ability ability for a credit union to be flexible. And CSE had an amazing story of somebody who came in, they had their infant with them, and their infant had a plastic bag around like the bottom half of their legs. And it's because they ran out of diapers.
Wow.
And they were in a grocery bag.
Wow.
And they're like, I just need $250 to just go buy formula and diapers for my child. And CSE was able to give them a loan for like 0% interest so they can go do that. Didn't have to apply for credit, didn't have to pay a fee. And then they were able to, get what they needed. And then you all were paid back pretty quickly. And it was like, you took a shot on somebody. Tell me how you can do that today with all the regulation and laws in place. Our job is to make sure that things like that happened in 2016 can continue, because that's the credit union difference. We will go out of our way to make sure you have something, regardless of what it brings to our institution, because we care about you. And we make sure your kid's okay too, right?
That means a lot. That means a lot. Jeannie, when you think about the impact that they have on your job, right? You have to make sure that the credit union can operate, right? And the rules and regulations have a big impact on what you guys do. How does her work impact your work?
So we regularly reach out to Emily and the team at the league. They really are a way to magnify our voice. So we're able to speak on what's happening in our direct membership, the needs that we have, potentially what changes are coming down the pike that may negatively affect our membership, whether that be in fees or interest rate structures, regulations, access to credit. And so we're able to reach out to Emily and the team. They're then able to kind of magnify that across the state of Ohio. They get feedback from multiple credit unions in every corner of the state, and then, of course, across the country with their partnerships. And it really does just help unite our voice. It says, okay, here is a creative solution. Or the other part of it is they keep us informed. This is what they are doing every day. They're kind of our ear on the state house and in Congress and with the Senate to be able to say, hey, here's what may be happening. How do we want to respond? What is your stance? What would be the impact to your membership if, say, this fee were to be initiated or prevented? If we were no longer able to do this, would you still be able to provide those services to your membership as part of your community? What would happen?
Right.
So it really is a two-way street. We're able to talk with you regularly. You inform us, and then we're able to kind of be the voice from the streets to let you know what the impacts would be and how we would continue to do business as we do today.
That makes a lot of sense. That's great. That makes a lot of sense.
So obviously there's a lot of issues everywhere in the world, but even just in the financial world that impact members that you guys work on. What are some things that in the next 12 to 18 months you guys will be either highlighting, working on, advocating for? What does the next year or so look like for you guys?
Oh, that's a great question, Tim. And I always preface this, we think the year is going to look like something, and then it turns into whatever it is. There's always something unexpected. Absolutely. Right. We all know that, right? It's like, I intended to go on that great trip, and then my hot water heater decided to die. Right. So we've all had that happen. But, the first thing we're really focused on, we're hearing a ton from credit unions like CSE and others across the state, all 209 of them. Fraud is a massive issue, and it's impacting every single one of us. We've all gotten the notification, your information is now on the dark web. We have had our debit card numbers stolen and money's been charged there. We've gone to a fraudulent website and we accidentally put in our information because we thought it was legitimate and it wasn't, right? And so credit unions are the forefront of this. It's a giant battle, and it's becoming a greater issue. As we continue to digitize our economy, this is going to continue to be a problem. And so we're really focused on trying to find ways to combat fraud, hold bad actors accountable, and then find ways to educate consumers on how to protect your information. And so we're looking forward to working with credit unions on that, because they're all on the front lines of this. Right. They're the ones defending consumers, their members, from this fraud, and we need to work together to solve it. It's very complicated. The other issue we're working on is there's a tax reform bill that is going to be discussed in Congress in the first 6 months or so. It's a Tax Cuts and Job Act of 2017. There's a lot of interest in renewing that information. And whenever you open up the tax code, all kinds of things can happen. And credit unions are not-for-profit, which means they use their tax exemption from the federal government and from the state of Ohio to influence better financial inclusion and community development. and financial well-being. And so they translate that. It's almost like an economic pass-through, right? That tax dollars are flown through credit unions directly to credit union members so they can get better rates, they can get tailored services and tailored products or innovative solutions as financial services change. And so our job, we really see as making sure credit unions can continue living their mission. And part of that comes in that tax battle. And so we're going to be working really hard on differentiating credit unions in the market to show their value, to show the impact that they make economically and, at the kitchen table for everyday families. So those are our big two things that we're really focused on. And I would say sort of connected to the fraud would be data security, right? Sure. How do we help make sure that our data is more safe and protected and isn't sold and is accessible to us? And I know all credit unions are committed to that. We really need to enhance data security in this country and in this state, and it will protect consumers. It will protect credit union members. So that's another big issue we've been battling for quite some time, and would love to get that across the finish line.
Yeah, thank you for the update, and all of it sounds good to us.
That's good. I like that. I like that. That means we're listening, which is important.
Right. I love that. So we are here in Canton, Ohio. You're a Massillon person.
That's okay. We won't talk about it.
We're not going to talk about the fact that we
won't talk about the football team and the wins. And
we're all friends, and we're all here to advocate for credit unions. But being here in Canton, Massillon, surrounding areas, I'm not in Columbus. I'm not in DC. What could I do, or what can everyday people do to advocate in this area?
Oh, that's a great question, Lucas. First is be informed. Educate yourself, seek out information, understand what's going on. And there's a variety of news sources, and I know a lot of folks get it digitally these days. So just trust your source, understand what your source is when you are looking up for information. But if there's something you're interested in or something that bugs you, like, I wish this was different, do some research, find out what it is. And chances are you aren't the only one that feels that way. Yeah. And there's probably a group out there that's trying to attack that issue too. And so it could be an outlet for you to affect change, either personally for you or in your community that you see. Be a part of the solution, right? And the only way to do that is to get educated. And when you get educated and you are informed and you understand who's a part of that issue, say it's credit unions, there are always outlets to get access to decision makers. Groups like the Ohio Credit Union League, which is the trade association that I work for, we're just a pass-through from constituent concerns. Same for the credit union. It's really the members, it's the consumers, it's the people that live here in Massillon and Canton and Stark County that know how things are impacting them. Give them an outlet through a call to action. Submit a pre-written letter that a group like we would create to say, don't do this. This is what's going to happen if you do. It might be well-intentioned, but it might not have the impact that you think. And so telling those personal stories are so important. And they pay attention when you get a lot of them, right? There's 660 people. If you start getting 1,000 emails a day saying don't do something, they're going to pay attention to that. And so my advice is educate and become informed. And, take action through the outlets that are available to you. And it might lead to going to DC and sitting in a lawmaker's office. Fair. And the beauty of all of that is it shouldn't be intimidating at all because you're the expert in what you're talking about. They are not. And so your job is to tell them why this is so important. You are the expert in that moment. It's very empowering. And that's my advice for everybody is to exercise that. That's what makes our democracy special, and it does work.
I love it. If somebody wants to reach out to the Ohio Credit Union League or yourself, how can someone get in touch with you?
Oh, that's a great question. So we are on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram. So you can look at the Ohio Credit Union League and hear about all the great things that credit unions are doing across the state. Learn more about our advocacy efforts on behalf of consumers in Ohio, especially those 3.3 million Ohioans that belong to a credit union. We don't take that lightly. And so we talk about the great work we're doing through those outlets. We also have a website, which is www.ohiocreditunions.org. And you'll see all of our news on there. Our advocacy team will be listed. There will be calls to action on there about a variety of issues that are coming up that we need some help on. And it's also a good way to learn more about the value of credit unions and what they can do for you. And the last resource I'll say is a national effort, and it's yourmoneyfurther.com. And so if you go to yourmoneyfurther.com, you can search for a credit union near you, right? So if you type in Massillon zip code, which is 44646, you're going to see CSE Federal Credit Union, you're going to see Friends and Family, you're going to see golden circle, right? You're going to see these credit unions that are local here, and you can find out where their website is, get in touch with somebody if you have a question about services or you need some help. And you can also learn a little bit more about what credit unions are and how they're different from banks. And so do your homework and take a look. And I think you'll be very impressed and very proud of what credit unions are and what they've become in this state.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Well, Tim, you brought some more great friends, man.
I'll let her I don't want to say mic drop because I'm sure these
can't be dropping the Lucas Love Media mics, okay?
Yeah.
But
it's a good thing they're on stands.
I know they're on
stands. Blow up on
just right. We can just drop them and they explode, right?
For sure. But no, thank you for being here. Obviously, advocacy for credit unions is such a huge deal. And people don't understand the impact of what you do and how it impacts their money. So for that insight, we appreciate that. Appreciate you coming up all the way from Columbus for this. And we'll have you back next year for another season. So
that sounds great, Tim. Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you both for being here. Tim, another great show. Yeah. To our listeners, to our viewers, we're so grateful for all of you. And we'll be back next time. We'll see you then. Have a great day.